Hello, Gene Schwimmer here, and welcome to me. First thing, before I forget, my promised Detroit Part 2 video, it's definitely coming. I was hoping to do it this week. The problem is I want to include some photos, some graphs and stuff. I just haven't had time to put all that stuff together, but I'm recording this video on a Friday to post it on Monday, so I've got the weekend ahead of me, and I'm going to put everything together on the weekend, and then hopefully I will record it on Monday and it will be up on YouTube on Tuesday. I hope I can keep my promise, but that's my goal. You may have noticed that yesterday's video was a little shorter than they usually are, and the reason for that is I had a second subject that I wanted to cover. I had recorded the whole thing, but then when I played it back, when I was about to edit it, I realized that I had left out some points that I wanted to make, and just the overall quality, I wasn't really happy with it, so I just decided I'll do it over in a future video. But it also occurred to me that maybe short video is better. It was nice and short and succinct. Maybe I'm covering too much. Maybe 10 minutes is too long. I've been aiming kind of for 10 minutes, and they've actually been coming out 15 minutes sometimes. So if you want to, let me know in the comments if you have any preference for longer videos or shorter videos. If nobody expresses a preference, then I'm going to try to keep them short, around 5 minutes. Can't promise I'll do it, and I'll probably even go over this time because I've been talking about what I've been talking about so far. I probably used up a couple minutes right there. Anyways, on to the subjects, a couple of short subjects and maybe a longer one. But I would put this first note up here. The economy increased at a 2.6% annual rate in the last quarter. Why I want to mention that is because we've been hearing for the, well, all through the Obama administration that we were supposed to expect slower growth now. Below 2%, and then we have the Trump administration, and again I have a big problem with the Trump supporters who support him no matter what he does, no matter what he says. There's a lot he does wrong that he needs to be criticized for, but when he does do something right, then he deserves to be complimented on it. So that's what I'm doing, 2.6%. He was talking about 3%. He was shooting for 3% growth, which is what the historical growth has been for the United States since the country was founded, and it's even been higher sometimes, such as during the Reagan administration, and again, to give credit, during the Clinton administration, it was over 3%, second only to the Reagan administration, which is ironic in a way because he lost control of Congress after his first 2 years and was forced to change direction, and that's when we suddenly had the growth. Had he been following those policies from the beginning of his presidency, he would have beaten Reagan. He would have had more average economic growth than Reagan had. So he didn't, so he doesn't quite get the cigar, but still he deserves praise. And getting back to Trump, he does too. He was talking about 3% growth, and Democrats were saying, well, those days are over, you're not going to get 3%. We are now a little over 6 months into the Trump presidency, and we are at 2.6%. At least in the last quarter, and that's up from 1.2 in the quarter before. So we'll see what happens, but that's very good news. The president deserves credit, and I hope it continues, because 3% growth will do wonders for this economy, not just for wages, but for the suicide rate. I'm sorry to say a lot of working-aged people, especially men, have been committing suicide or taking heroin or various other drugs. I think a lot of it is because of a lack of jobs, and I'm hoping that, according to this report, the jobs have not quite caught up with the growth, but there has been good news about jobs recently, and I hope this is more good news. I hope you all get jobs out there. I'm from Detroit. I'm from a blue-collar background. Well, not blue-collar, middle class. My father had a fruit market. He was not a guy working in a factory, though he did. When he first came to this country, he was working, I think, in the Ford Rouge plant. But that's the American dream, I guess. He worked in a car factory, and then he got married to an American, my mother, and her family put up some money, gave him, I think, $5,000 to start his own business. He started a fruit market, and that's what he did his whole life. He had a fruit market, and he supported a wife and two children. I'm one of the two children. I'll tell you about my brother someday, maybe. So that's that story. And the other story I want to get to, not the other story, another story. That I had three queued up, and we'll see if I get to all of them. But this is, well, the article I'm putting up. Oh, and I should always mention, when I refer to an article or if I state a fact, unless it's something that's easily looked up or everybody knows, I link to it in the description below the screen. If you scroll down to the end of the description, you'll find the articles, and then you can read for yourself, either to get more detail or to check me whether I'm out of context or I misstated something. So this article, The Real Reason Overseas Manufacturing is Coming to America. This is about China opening factories in the United States. Donald Trump had a photo op with a Chinese executive from Foxconn, the world's largest contract electronics maker. 12 factories in China, now he's opening in the United States. And Donald Trump, I mean, he's welcome to take it. It's like Reagan said, imagine what you can accomplish if you let somebody else have the credit. So if he wants to take credit for this, he can. And I think he does deserve some credit, because I think part of the reason for these overseas companies coming to the United States is that they're expecting a better business environment than they had under Obama and the Democrats. But also, to be fair, this move started in 2015 and maybe even earlier. And the reason is because the monthly salary doubled in 2010 in China, at least as Foxconn. And, well, I'll just put up the quote. Since then, it's gotten more expensive to manufacture goods in China. In the past 5 years, wages in China have grown about 10 to 15% a year, while the increase in the U.S. is about 2.5%. And then there's a group, Boston Consulting Group, and they say that industrial electricity prices in the U.S. are 30 to 50% lower than in other major export nations, and that includes China. So, second quote coming up here, overall China's manufacturing cost advantage over the U.S. shrank from 14% in 2004 to only 1% in 2016. What they're saying is that the advantage of manufacturing overseas, it's disappearing. At least between us and China, it's now only a 1% difference, and that's probably going to change as we move forward. And then you have to include the shipping costs, because when they manufacture stuff over there, then they've got to ship it over here. And when you have a lot of customers, when you have a big customer base in another country, there's a point where it starts to make sense to manufacture in that country rather than ship to that country. And that's what's happening. But there's also another factor, and this is the one that I really wanted to get to, which is that when you have free trade, when you have, well, just as this article says, there was a time in the past, and this was true of South Korea, it was true of Hong Kong, and now it's true of mainland China, that when you have free trade, when you manufacture in another country, when you allow them to export to us, you reach a point when the wages start to go up in that country. And then that low-wage country, it becomes a middle-class country. That's what happened in South Korea and Hong Kong, and now it's happening in China. The wages go up, and as the wages go up, the cost advantage of manufacturing in that country goes down. The advantage goes down, and as the advantage goes down, you just have a division of labor, that it just sometimes makes more sense to manufacture in one country than in another. And in fact, in this article I just mentioned, one of the low-wage industries is textiles and clothing being manufactured in China. And now you have a company called Kier, which is a Chinese thread producer, and they've been operating in South Carolina since 2015. And here's what the president, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name. In the U.S., land, electricity, and cotton are all much cheaper. My production cost per ton of textiles is 25% lower in the United States than in China. It doesn't make sense to grow cotton in the U.S. and ship it all the way to China to have Chinese workers make the actual textiles and then ship it all the way back here. if you have a lot of U.S. customers. It's just good for everybody. When you have free markets, they're always, and I'll end on this example, Africa, because Africans have said over and over, various African officials, stop helping us with foreign aid. Just open up your markets. Let us ship to you duty-free. And the argument on our side has always been, well, then you're going to flood the United States with all these cheap African goods, and they're going to put Americans out of work, and so on and so forth, just like we heard from China. And we know from China what is going to happen, what would happen if we would just have free trade with Africa. There would be a disparity for a while, but then the living standards and the wages of these African workers would rise, just as they have in China. And when their wages rise, no country is an island, and they would be buying U.S. products, and that creates jobs for us over here. A rising economic tide really does raise all ships. And with that, this is being recorded on a Friday, and you're seeing it on a Monday. So I'm planning to have a nice weekend as I'm recording this, and I'm hoping that you had a nice weekend as you're listening to this. And I hope even more that if you liked this video and find me entertaining and informative, that you will share with other people, subscribe, and click the thumbs up like button, and help me get more audience so that I can make more and better videos. And that's it. Bye.
You got plan, darling?
I always got plan. They don't ever work, but I always got one.